a honorary consultant in medical oncology, but he's not joining us to talk about gynecological cancer, which is his clinical interest, but really in his role as a professor of digital health and cancer medicine in Leeds. He's the Chief Clinical Information Officer there, and also has a advanced role in the digital health, particularly focusing on cancer informatics and data analysis. And we've heard a huge amount just from our speakers this afternoon in terms of information. What I'm hoping you'll be able to do is to tell us how we're going to be able to pull all of this information together to be able to kind of come up with the optimal treatment management plans for patients with myeloma. Welcome.
Well, great. Thank you very much for that introduction. I hope that my slides are, there we go, my slides are displayed in the room. So thank you very much for inviting me, a gynae medical oncologist, to come and talk to you. So I'm here as a Chief Clinical Data Officer for HDI UK and a Director of DataCam, which is the element of HDI UK which is focusing particularly on the management of cancer patients. And we were established 3 or 4 years ago with a single aim, which was to facilitate access to the extraordinary data sets that the NHS captures and collates on cancer patients. But if anyone in the room has ever tried to access those data sets, they will know it's somewhat challenging. So in addition to improving access, can we improve the quality of that data? Can we work as a 4-nation collaborative rather than just an English group? And can we enhance the structured data that many people collect with the multimodal data set, which can integrate the full narrative of care, but also the digital imaging, digital pathology, and then the detailed genetic and molecular phenotyping, which, to be honest, the hemato-oncologists have led the rest of us solid tumor oncologists with. So we have been working for some time with NHS England. We have worked with them to establish a trusted research environment that now has the English nation's cancer patients within it and accessible within a cloud-based environment. This is a 60 million patient data set with a 60 billion rows of data, a cloud-based distributed computing environment, but that allows you to examine cancer patients at scale. So my focus is very much on the use of real-world evidence in contrast to clinical trials, which of course we all know are the gold standard for defining care. This is the timeline of first-line trials that have guided my practice in ovarian cancer. And we're a relatively active unit recruiting patients to clinical trials. But of the 5,000 to 6,000 patients that we have diagnosed in the time I've been involved, we've entered approximately 4% of our patients into clinical trials. The ICR have done surveys and found that throughout the whole course of treatment, up to 11% of patients had participated in a clinical trial. We all know that many patients aren't suitable for trials. They're elderly, they're frail, have comorbidities. Some patients choose not to enter into clinical trials. And therefore, the soapbox that I've stood on for many years is this concept that clinical trials are a fabulous way of collecting perfect data, but it's a deeply imperfect population. Whereas real-world evidence collects imperfect data on the perfect population because it's everybody. And of course, the economics of trials means we won't do trials in everybody, but we are now living in a world where we can use AI and computer technology to improve the quality of routine data. But actually, the obvious conclusions is these are not in conflict. They are deeply complementary approaches, and we need to do both. That is no longer just my opinion, because many others have appreciated the value of real-world evidence. So NICE, in their evaluation of new drugs, new technologies, now recognize that while randomized control trials are a preferred source of evidence, they desperately want to see that complemented with real-world evidence, particularly where it can fill evidence gaps and speed up patient access to new drugs. But they recognize that unlike an established methodology for clinical trials, real-world evidence studies need clear definitions of what best practice are. And best practice is realizing that we need the language, a common language, which allows centers across the UK and centers across the world to speak the same language. Clinical trials have very strict definitions within their protocols, But if we don't use those very strict definitions, we get very confused outcomes. We need to agree how we're defining a date of diagnosis. We need to agree what the key endpoints are. So we're working towards a common data model, a simple description of all cancer and all treatment. And we've recently published with European collaborators an OMOP-based data set that we think can be done for most cancer patients. OMOP is a common data model of health data for research. And if we can pull an international community together, we allow these federated analyses for patients across the world. That's relatively easy for structured data, but I think it's fair to say Leeds is no different. And 85% of the information we generate within our electronic health record is not structured, it's plain text. Now, it is possible to get human beings to go through that data, but we live in a world where a natural language processing will come. Many of you may have been aware of the work of the team at King's to develop a platform known as Cogstack and a tool known as Foresight. This is the concept of developing large language models, the ChatGPT of health. So King's have got a GPT which has reviewed the case notes of 1.5 million patients at King's, and it can guide on the management of future patients. This is really exciting, and in the next 25 years, absolutely will come, but state of the art today remains manual curation, but manual curation at scale and at a grade worthy of regulatory approval needs commercial help. And there is a company that I think is far and ahead in this world, and that is Flatiron. Flatiron have established partnerships with both NICE and the FDA, where they are curating data, real-world evidence to support drug evaluations by those organizations. And we in Leeds have just brought Flatiron into the UK, and Flatiron are currently looking for new partners across the UK to establish these really high quality real-world evidence data sets in the UK population. So we are also living in a world where the recognition of how to share data between centres is improving. Some of you may be aware that the NHS has just invested £140 million into research environments across the UK that can support this work. And if we can bring our data together through techniques such as federated analysis, we no longer have to share data to an analysis. We can bring the analysis to the data. And a team in Leeds have done a very similar program with a rare cancer, anal cancer, looking at data from 16 centres and provided a single analysis of that data, but with no data leaving any of the institutes in which it was generated. So we need to move to a world where real world evidence and clinical trials work together. And we need to work to move to a time where real world evidence can improve the design, the delivery, and the evaluation of clinical trials. And I think this is a world that we're very much sitting on the edge of. A number of the other speakers have mentioned AI, and AI is coming. And AI was absolutely a priority of the last government, and it remains a priority of the current government. I think this quote from Antonio D'Oliva in The Lancet is timely. AI is coming. Be a physician that uses AI, because if you're not, you'll be replaced by those that do. But I share Martin Landry's concerns about whether the NHS has IT that can support AI development and implementation. I have a group in Leeds that are implementing multimodal AI in my own clinical domain of ovarian cancer. So we're looking at the radiology of ovarian cancer, the pathology of ovarian cancer, and the structured and unstructured data within our EHR, and trying to bring those together in multimodal analysis and research. While I was preparing for this talk, I was curious as to where state of the art was in myeloma. And I was fascinated to read this, which I think is a great study in Nature Digital Medicine, where they have developed AI models to predict progression-free survival, overall survival, and adverse events on a range of data from a myeloma trial, and can now predict those factors based on the learning from a 703 patient cohort. So for those of you who are interested in how AI can come into myeloma, I think this is a fabulous study. I guess there's one point I would point out. This is a study that has been developed by the computer scientists at MIT. AI done properly is not the domain of clinicians. This is the domain of partnership with computer scientists. So I'll finish there. Suffice to say, if this has landed with anybody and they would like to work with DataCan, please contact me. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to access the national data on myeloma patients in the TRE, we can help you towards that. If you'd like to lead myeloma studies with a network of centres who can bring that data together, I'd be really pleased to hear from you. And with that, I'll say thank you.